Rise up, the Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up, rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.
All right, and we're back to the D's on Fire podcast. I'm doing my best Jim Carrey in the mask impression, or as Alec put it, I'm doing my Blue Man Group audition tape on this podcast. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but figured audio issues were not as good as video issues for a podcast. So this is what we're sticking with. But more importantly, both Duquesne Duke basketball teams, 10-3, non-conference season done, heading into the conference, tied for first place, and honestly could be tied for first place or be in first place for a little while for both teams. First test for Duquesne, obviously a tough one when we get into conference play with Dayton, but we'll get into them a little later. And man, we're in such a great mood because of how dominant the teams were today.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I planned on rewatching this game. I had it on while I was working at home today, so I was able to watch most of it, but not so in depth, but decided not to rewatch because it was such a beatdown. There's not much to analyze there.
Yeah, and that was true for both games. The first half, 16-0 run to start the women's game. They basically had Howard doubled up throughout the game until Meg McConnell got hurt. Nothing too serious, just took her out as precaution because they were ahead by so much. Offense kind of affected after that point. But the women's team looks strong. Guys, 29-2 run to start the game. Just ridiculous. And we'll get into those games a little more in depth later, but just great starts to the games and kind of coasted from there on out. Want to start off by talking about the Kevin Easley departure from the team. He was apparently coming back from suspension. In the DePaul post-game press conference, which we were doing the podcast during, so I couldn't listen to until after the podcast, Dambrot talked about Easley, saying he's done everything he's been asked to do in coming back to the team from suspension. Now they were working him into practices, getting him back into game shape, figuring out where he'd fit in the rotation. Duquesne graduated last weekend. A few days ago, he announced via a random person on Twitter that I've never heard of before that he's transferring from Duquesne. I hope that he gets more minutes wherever he goes. He got a lot of minutes last year, averaged slightly above 10 points per game, shot 33% from three. So not the sharpshooter that we were necessarily expecting him to be, but is capable, especially with how tall he is. That's still a respectable mark. Hopefully he finds somewhere where he can fit in and play right away. Obviously the suspension probably played a part in his decision, as well as, it would be tough for him to find minutes at this point.
Yeah, the team that we have this year is pretty deep. There just isn't many minutes to go around on this team. To be fair, we've had some injuries, so some guys had to step up the last two games, but even so.
Well, they've stepped up to a point where I think they're ahead of him on the rotation, realistically. Yeah. The position of need right now is point guard, now that we're down to losing both of our primary point guards with Tevin Brewer and Kareem Rozier. Rozier, hoping that he's back for the Rhode Island game is what I heard. So we'll likely miss Dayton as well as he did for today's game.
What was his injury?
I think it was an ankle sprain would be my guess. He was in a walking boot. They're saying it's not too serious, that they're expecting him back for the New Year's Eve game. So taking 2 weeks off, that my guess would be ankle sprain based off of that. But
Okay.
was not told what the injury was. Just adding 2 and 2 together with.
Yeah, I didn't even see the boot, so that's good on you.
Yeah.
Good enough for me.
And then Tevin Brewer, Dan brought, this was one of the other pieces of information he gave during the DePaul postgame presser. Brewer's availability is based solely on pain tolerance. It's a right shoulder injury. There's not much they're going to be able to do to make it better during the season. Not good things to hear, but I mean, he's going to want to get back in and play. It's just a matter of how much pain they can reduce before he can get back to things, especially with the right shoulder. I mean, that's brutal for any basketball
You don't need your
player.
shoulders in basketball. It's
Yeah,
fine. He's
any
fine.
basketball player definitely needs them, but a guy who's primarily a 3-point shooter and a ball handler, yeah, I can see that being a big issue.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I think of is that playoff series where I think it was the year the Suns went to the finals. In that first round, they played the Lakers, and Chris Paul had a shoulder injury. He literally couldn't shoot the three, but he was still playing out there. So sounds like
Well,
Brewer's going to have to do maybe not quite that drastic. Who knows how severe it is, but might just have to fight through it for a few games or whenever he feels like he can.
yeah. And the other notes from the DePaul postgame presser, just going chronologically here, folks. So I apologize. I know we touched on the game last pod, but there was a lot of good stuff in this postgame presser. He felt like the defense had picked up a lot in the first half because the 2 losses where they didn't shoot the ball well for the first time, really, as a team, kind of hammered into them that, okay, we really need to focus on defense if we're going to win, even on our off nights. So,
For sure.
and honestly, that has picked up. I feel like in all the games since then. I mean, Indiana State, it was a rough start, but once they buckled down, I felt like their defense was a lot better, even on the 3-point shooters. I mean, they struggled against some of the positions, but you and I will talk about how that was probably more of a scheme fit, really, than anything else when it came to the issues covering those threes. And the last little thing, Dan Brott was talking about how there was a question about Trey Williams, and he said Trey's never been a star, but he's playing really well in his role. Tonight the stat line wasn't great, but his presence was good, and he added to our dominance inside. He talked about how he chased Johnson around, and when Trey came out, Johnson started going off. So he did note that like there was a key player on their team that he kept locked down. But the quote that really got to me was after Dan Brott talked about Trey as being a singles hitter. He's not a home run hitter. That posed a question as to Dan Brott as to what kind of baseball player he was. Was he a singles hitter? Dan Brott said, I wasn't even a singles hitter. I just let the ball hit me. And man, does that sum up our coach.
Me and Dan Brott have the same baseball history. I did the same thing. I couldn't hit the right side of a barn. I remember a game I got hit in the ass twice. And my dad was like, "Oh, you showed toughness out there." I was like, "Thanks. I know I suck, but it's fine."
I wish the balls hit me. No, I made contact. I made contact with the baseball. It just happened to go right to the shortstop, basically every time on a line drive, just right to him. It's
you sound like Bryson Stott in the playoffs. Oh my god, that guy he hit every single ball, but it was never in play. It was always he always had like 8-9 pitch at bats, but could never get it in play.
So those were the key notes from the DePaul presser. He did touch on Easley, saying that he was getting worked it back into the rotation. He did everything they asked of him, but that's moot now that he's transferred from the team. Let's see. The next game on the schedule was Cornell for the women's basketball team. Just gonna run through this real quick because I know Alec isn't gonna have as much insight on this one. Great ball movement from the team. Once again, they really were shooting the three really well. Lauren Wasselson came off the bench and provided great minutes, especially as a stretch four. Meg McConnell, complete game. And we found out in the latest game that she really is the key to the offense moving around. Amaya Hamilton, who I had on my Christmas wish list to continue driving to the basket, keeping the confidence up. She's done so, and now she's playing. She played a little bit of point guard as like the second tallest player on the court after Meg McConnell went out. So that was an interesting little look that the Dukes had.
Ben Simmons.
Yeah. And then Tess Myers, who is the real star from this past week, was hot from three. She got 7 threes in this game. Also got 10 rebounds. It was her first career double-double. She ended up with like, I think 26 or 27 points. And then after the Cornell game, was tied for first in the NCAA in 3-pointers made.
Wow.
So yeah, she's
and very impressive.
She had a great week. And then even the missed shots in this game were good shot attempts. Like the ball movement was so great that they didn't take any shots that were contested or down to the wire, just chuck ups, which, I mean, crazy.
You just want open looks. If they don't get knocked down, that's fine, just as long as you get open good shots.
Yeah. And I mean, you can say a lot of good things about the Duquesne men's team, but they definitely have moments where they take their shots that are not necessarily well advised.
Oh yeah.
We were the much bigger team against Cornell, and it showed. The rebounding numbers. We won handily, 42 rebounds to 18. We more than doubled up another Division I team. And Cornell, I mean, they're not a no-name school, so that.
I have a coworker. She's a Cornell grad.
We used our strength. They were a little careless with the ball, particularly in the second half after we built up a huge lead. So that was a focal point in the post-game presser because, I mean, there wasn't much else to criticize, but Coach Burt has to find something to criticize. So the one good aspect of the post-game presser that Coach Burt had that I felt was really powerful was he talked about their track record with this new transfer portal era of the NCAA. Players don't transfer from Duquesne. They occasionally get them, but they don't transfer from the women's program, which is mainly true. I know of like 2 or 3 transfers that Duquesne's had since I like really started getting invested in the program on the women's side of things, and they were all transfers that weren't necessarily moving on to better things. It was more so just opening up scholarships for other players, I think. So yeah,
that's a good sign of a good program.
Yeah, and the women's team success continued, but we'll go chronologically again and dive into Indiana State. I had some great seats with my dad on this one. We were basically courtside, right behind, a little diagonal from the TV broadcast announcers, and we got to see the TV showing what the TV audience was seeing, so we could see the instant replays and stuff, which was helpful a few times during the game as well.
For sure.
The broadcasters alluded to this during the game when I finally watched the rewatch. The national anthem was done by a violinist. Had to stop partway through. I think a violin string broke, and the violinist like ran off the court. So they were talking about after the slow start for the Dukes that we should just restart everything, restart the game, restart the national anthem, restart.
I remember hearing that quote, but I didn't turn it on in time for the national anthem to play. So
yeah,
that makes a lot more sense now, that joke.
I don't even know if it was shown during the TV broadcast, but being there, I was impressed that there was a violinist doing a national anthem. I've never heard a national anthem done by a single violin before. And maybe I know
the one time you try to be unique, you get super unfortunate.
Diving into the big picture notes from the Indiana State game, I thought their coach made a lot of mistakes. And I mean, it started off with the pregame technical foul that I don't think I've ever seen before, where they just didn't turn the roster in on time. I've heard of it in baseball, never in basketball.
Yeah, that's no, I don't think so either. Just baseball. I didn't even know that was like a thing you could get.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense for basketball. I mean, you have to do it for every sport, but yeah, the fact that that can actually get called is wild.
Yeah. And then because it was a focal point of some of the fans, number 23, Macaulay's shorts were absurdly high during that game, absurdly high, and he continued to roll them up to the point the ref actually had to warn him about them and told him he had to lower them. What was not made a point during the broadcast.
Thank God he was wearing full length leg
Yes.
compressions. I mean,
Great.
for all of us, for all of our sake. Kids are watching these,
viewer.
damn it. Kids are watching this.
This is a family. Duquesne is a family-run, family-friendly school. Those shorts were not Duquesneable.
Not Duquesne. I haven't heard that in years. Oh my God.
Um,
They certainly weren't. They certainly weren't.
And
he got teed up. He got teed up too. So, you know, karma.
He did, and it was clearly because he was talking, which he was doing to fans throughout. And I think he got teed up because the ref thought he was talking to other players, and I think he was probably just continuing his trash talk with the fans. I don't think he was focusing it on any players.
It was to anyone who would listen, whether it was
true.
the players or the fans. The refs too. The refs can get some too. If you're listening.
Yeah. So whatever he said, he must have said a magic word. With how quickly that tee came down.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. Wait, some teams need that type of energy, So
yeah. And
he probably plays a role on that team.
One of the rare things that I took a note of during watching the game live was that number 15 on their team, Cameron Henry, definitely felt like their best player all night. Felt like he could really initiate the offense whenever he wanted to. And then when I watched the broadcast and heard that, yeah, he's leading this team in basically every stat, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Yes. Okay. And he was not in the game at the end of the game, which I also thought was one of those other mistakes that the coach made where like you have a clear best player on your team and you didn't save him for the final minutes in a somewhat close game. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was a bizarre move. I mean, he wasn't in foul trouble or anything.
No, I think at most he would have
had 4 turnovers, but if he's your main ball handler, like that's, you live with that.
Yeah. And I referenced this earlier. The matchup between our style of play and our players versus their players showed the strengths of both teams and the weaknesses of both teams. And Alec, you and I talked about this in our immediate aftermath of the game, and we kind of wanted to just do a podcast right then and there, I felt like, but why don't you cover that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Indiana State was just small overall. Their starting 5 was a lot smaller than ours, and our deepest position is in the front court. So on offense, we dominated on the boards. And that's kind of how Trey was able to eat. Trey Williams in this game had his best game, 19 points, 8 of 9 from the field. So he was able to eat down low. But then on the defensive end for us, that just opened the 3 ball. Like they were doing 5 out basically the entire game. And that exposed some of our bigs when they would go and contest shots out there.
Yeah, I thought in particular this was probably the worst game I've ever seen out of Rotroff. And I mean, it was a fit thing defensively, definitely, and then offensively, he just couldn't get anything going, which was a little odd to me. But he also didn't get many minutes because of how bad he was struggling defensively, I think.
For sure. If he's not going to take enough shots to take advantage of his size, and he's going to get beat on defense, and that was a good decision, I thought, by Dan Broad.
I mean, the early part of the game was tough to watch again, and honestly, it delayed my rewatching a few days because I did not want to rewatch the start of that game.
20-4 in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and
Indiana State was up.
And during that time, I legitimately questioned what was worse, our offense or our defense at the start of the game. It was horrendous on both ends. I'm leaning towards the offense because of just how poor
It
shot
was it was
selection.
slow. It was a slow offense, and they just weren't. I don't know. It took them a little bit to get into the game, I thought.
Yeah, and it was really capped off to me by the turnover by Trey Clark, where we swung the ball around the 3-point arc, and he didn't even like think of looking to see if a player was reading the pass, passed it, clear, easy turnover by Henry, and then Henry stepped out of bounds. We were very fortunate that he stepped out of bounds
Yeah.
because there was no way he was being stopped on a layup.
Yeah, I don't know how he stepped out of bounds there. Like there was no reason he. I don't know. That
I
was
don't
weird.
know.
I thought that was a weird play.
I don't know, that was fortunate, and then also the double tech was fortunate. I mean, we both love Bari, what we've seen of him so far, but and he did get shoved. I thought the shove was more of a normal foul, and it only got called as a technical because Bari made the shove back clearly after the play was over, and I mean, yeah. So we got very fortunate that was a normal that was a double technical as opposed to just one on Bari. Yeah, I had, even though 20-4 was like the biggest difference in points, 21-6 was the rock bottom for me. That was at the point where we finally got things turned around after that free throw happened. We had the absurd 3 by Trey in the
Yeah,
corner.
I have that in my notes. Step back 3 in the corner. That was sick.
And then it was followed up by a nice hustle play by Rotroff, probably the best play he made all game, where he dove on the ball in the opposite corner that Trey made his 3, and then the foul call was questionable, but I was definitely accepting any generosity at that point. And yeah, we got the ball. We had a nice nice time moving the ball after that.
I thought Haransky played really well in this game, especially in the first half. Defensively, he got a steal, fast break bucket for himself. And he was also good in today's Winthrop game. So
yeah,
and Rozier came in and provided a spark defensively, especially in this Indiana State game. That was very much needed.
This was definitely Rozier's best game as a Duke as well. I mean, every shot that he hit in this game felt big. And I mean, he's not known as a shooter, but you know what? He made both of the threes that I remember him taking, and he ended up with 10 points. Yeah, and I mean, hey, my Christmas gift to him: get a 3-point shot. And I don't know if it's consistent. They were both in rhythm, well taken shots that were within the offense, which is what we like. So that's great.
As a team, we shot almost 50, 40, 90. Shot 52% from the field, 41% from 3, and 88% from the line. And we took a lot of foul shots, made 23 free throws in this game. So,
and it's so ironic that the technical free throw to start the game is the reason why we didn't get to 90. That is so ironic.
Yeah. Yep. We put it that way.
Our best free throw shooter that we handpicked to get a point to start the game. he got the pregame shot out of the way. Pregame miss, it's fine. Yeah, the refs missed a few obvious travel calls, I thought. There was one part towards the end of the first half that like there was a series of ref decisions that like just, I mean, since I was there, it was even worse with how I am with refs.
No, yeah.
But missed the obvious travel, then the obvious travel was in the same play. We got a foul and a goaltend called on us. That was all in the same sequence of events. And then they took Reese's 3-point play away because they called it a foul on the floor when a guy jumped on top of him. I've never seen a ref not give continuation for a foul like that. But we had a ball don't lie moment right after with Trey Clark hitting a 3 on the inbound after they took away the 3-point play by Reese. So I like
how Reese played in this game.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. I mean, Reese had like 15 to 17 points in this game as well, right?
16 points, 4-6 from the field. He made a 3-pointer. He's got a pretty good.
He does have a good outside. Like if we're talking about a guy who can cover stretch 4s,
Yeah.
He's one of the guys that can. Obviously, he's our best all around big, so like you don't want to take him away from doing what he's known, which is dominating down low all the time. But he has the ability to play anywhere.
He's also like I've noticed this the last few games that he's played. His go-to post move, he gets on the left block in the post, then he does the spin move towards the baseline, and he does a reverse layup, like uses the basket as interference. And he's done that maybe like once or twice in the last every game that he's since he came back from injury. It's a gorgeous move.
And for all you opposing teams out there, do not listen to what we just said. Don't focus on that whatsoever.
They can't stop it anyway, so go ahead and try.
Let's see. Very frustrated that we always have to have a goaltend call at least once a game. We had 2 this time. We did get 1 back, which I mean is the first time I remember us getting a goaltend given to us in a while. But
I'm starting to get used to him at this point.
Speaking of Reese, I didn't like that he got subbed out at the 6:25 mark. That was like right when he got a few points, like a few baskets consecutively. Felt like he was really getting in a groove offensively. He messed up one time on defense, and that was why Dambrot took him out. But I mean,
I don't know. I've noted this, like he played 25 minutes in this game. He played 25 in the DePaul game as well. Do you think there's maybe a minutes slight restriction on that for him coming back, getting his win back?
I think there's definitely a plan in place on like getting and I mean, the bigs are definitely our deepest position at this point. So
yeah,
trying to find minutes for everybody. But I mean, when you have a player in a groove, it's not when you take him out. You ride the hot hand until, he needs a break. He never showed that he visibly needed a break. I think it was a coaching moment based off of defense, which I get, but like he felt like he could have made like a legendary stretch of offense.
I didn't write this down, but in preparation for this, I was just browsing some stats and I saw like per 36, Reese is our second highest scorer, like, behind Day. So
yeah, which
he's showing that he can be maybe the number 2 scorer on this team, probably number 3 next to Clark. Since he's been heating up the last few games. But
yeah, I was going to say it makes sense that Trey's not the second highest per minutes because he's on the floor for so many minutes that like what he's putting out is what he can put out.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see.
I have a general old man like gripe.
All right.
It's not that old man, but can the TV graphics guys like get it together?
Oh, switching to a commercial like for a second.
They do it twice a game. It's
more than twice
a game.
It
happened again today.
So often in this one.
Oh my god!
So often in the A&M State game, and I know.
I wrote that down. I'm like, I have to write this down because it happens every fucking game I watch.
And I know there's students involved in the process, but like, I know there's.
Let's get it together, students. You've been doing it every game.
I also know there's professionals doing it. So like, come on, guys.
That's why I let it. That's why I didn't write it down because I'm like, okay, this is A10 broadcast. Like you said, students are doing it, but this has been this is every game I've watched. So let's get it together, okay? After the holiday break, everyone take a break, relax, enjoy your time with the family, and then come back focused more than ever.
All right, and then my 2 old man gripes that I still haven't from the first half. The phantom foul on the 3 by Day is so infuriating. Like they even showed in the replay, he really never touched him. Like if you're a ref, I don't know how you could be right next to it, and then like there's a sound component to it. There clearly couldn't have been a sound because nothing touched. Nothing.
I love your ref gripes. It gets me every time.
But I mean,
it's college refereeing. I don't know.
Like the ref was in the perfect position to even see this, and it's right there. I get why Day was so worked up about it. I do, and I'm glad the refs didn't punish him for it because I was a little worried they were going to with how like animated he was about it. But he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just very adamant.
Oh my god!
I never touched him. Dixon provided some really good minutes in the first half.
Yeah, I have that. I wrote that down as well.
And then my last note,
Got a
Horrible,
lot of offensive rebounds.
horrible final possession. Not even getting a shot off.
Oh yeah.
That was, I mean, it was a great end to the first half, obviously, because we came back and actually had a lead at halftime, which didn't seem possible at the start of this game. But I mean, you gotta at least find a way to get a shot off, even if it's a terrible shot. Just throw the ball in the air, something. Um, yeah.
I think
Uh,
the final thing from this game, I don't know, unless you have more, is just Trey Williams had the best game of the season for him.
no question.
Um, he showed what he can do at his best, and I haven't really seen his best up until this game. So that was nice to see like what he's capable of. He needs to keep it up. That's all. That's all. I have more on that. I don't know if you want to get into it now, but
Well, let me finish off my notes from this game. I'll go through
okay.
the post game comments, and then you can have your moment with Trey. The other Trey
Trays.
Clark,
We're going into deep dive into both trays in this pod
right?
because they both
Yeah,
deserve it.
and the other Trey Clark. One of the moments I did note broke ankles and then buried the three on number 4, and that it wasn't the official dagger because there was enough time left where they still could have come back, but man, that just capped off a nice run there. And I mean, he's racked up so many highlights already this season, and he racked up 2 other ones with dunks today.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot of time on this podcast. Don't worry.
He's a highlight machine. A highlight machine. Not another weird coach, like the decision by their coach, not fouling when we got the ball with a minute 30 or 50 seconds left. We were up by like 3 or 4 possessions at that point. You let us eat a minute off the clock with a minute 30 left.
I was fine with it personally.
I get it. I get it from our end that we're fine with it, but from a coaching, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand what, like in an ideal world, I still don't understand how he thinks he can win that game, letting us eat a minute of the minute 30 left. I don't
It was
know.
pretty dumb. I wouldn't have done it.
I wouldn't have either. The interesting notes from the post game, Dambrot not happy with the defensive effort. Biggs aside,
No, this was a shootout. Yeah.
Biggs aside from Trey had a tough time covering Biggs, who could shoot. Day and Trey Clark played badly in the first half. He noted it. And that was true. I mean, that was why our offense stunk for the first bit there, because they were taking shots, which I mean, I get you're our best shooters, but at the same time, we got to try and get some good looks, especially when we're in that big of a slump. He noted McGriff is playing through some knee pain, which makes his minutes that much more valuable. And honestly, his performance today even more incredible because he looked great today. And
I thought he played pretty well in this Indiana State game, relatively speaking, too. I mean, he's not going to be the most important player, but he's replacing Brewer in the starting lineup, so he's taken a lot more ball handling duties, and I think he probably should if we were healthy. But he's been doing, I think, exactly what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, and the last note I have from the post-game presser, Dambrot praised Kareem, Bronski, and McGriff for basically letting the team survive the first half. Without them playing the way they did, it could have been catastrophic.
Yeah. No,
so.
I said it earlier. Rozier and Hronsky off the bench, they both provided a spark. Hronsky, it doesn't show in the box score, but defensively he was working really hard, and obviously Rozier had his best game. A lot of people had their best games of the season in this game,
which I mean,
offensively at least.
Yeah, in an offensive shootout, that makes sense. We get over 90 points. Yeah, a lot of people are going to have good games.
Yeah.
Last note from this game: shout out to Eric Tamales and Bill Talarico for hooking me and my dad up with those seats. Just big shout out to you guys. We'll always be accepting those ticket offers any chance. So feel free to keep messaging if you have any. All right. And then let's go into your statistical deep dives. Let's hear it.
Okay. Yeah, I actually want to start with Jimmy Trey Clark first because I think he deserves it. He's been playing out of his mind these last 6 games, especially basically the entire time that I've been watching this team, and his splits like really show it. So, let's see. Let me just pull up my notes here. So I want to note in these stats, I excluded the Santa Barbara game because that was a clear outlier out of the game logs. He had 0 points, only 16 minutes. It was by far his worst game of the season. So excluded that. It was an outlier.
That was serious foul trouble, I believe.
Yeah, and it makes it an even 6-game. You compare 6 game to 6 game. First 6 games of the season, last 6 games of the season. So first 6 games of the season, he was averaging 24 minutes a game, 7 shots a game. What do you think he was shooting from three in the first 6 games of the season, like percentage wise?
So I heard some comment that didn't make much sense to me where they said that Ball State was the first time he made a three. I don't think that's accurate.
Let me see. I have the game logs up. Ball State. No, that's not right.
All right. I'm gonna guess he shot.
Yeah, I heard that too on the broadcast. I'm like, that's just not true.
Yeah.
But yeah, percentage wise, what do you think?
I'm gonna go 28%.
25%.
All right.
He shot from three. The last 6 games. So if I actually included today's Winthrop game in these numbers, but before, so if we excluded Winthrop,
we exclude Winthrop and Santa Barbara. Got it.
So out of a 5-game sample before Winthrop, he was shooting 43% the last 5 games from three.
And he did not shoot poorly in today's game. I don't know how it affects the numbers, but it wouldn't affect.
He shot 1 from 5 from 3 today. He was better at from 2 today.
Okay.
He got to the basket a few times. Yeah. So that's what. But either way, he's shooting. So the last 6 games, that would be 37% from 3. So still good. Just 20. I was shocked to see 25 because basically, from what I've seen, he's just a good 3-point shooter. So the fact that I saw 25% in the first 6 games was really eye popping.
Well, I'll give you this from him. When he was at VCU, he was a defensive specialist, very athletic guy in his freshman year at VCU.
Yeah,
that was what I saw. That's what I was expecting. Like a great athlete that's just going to cover the floor, run, make.
I think that was the first thing I said in the Santa Barbara game. Like he's good defensively. Like he's just our best on-ball defender.
Yeah,
out of the perimeter.
And he definitely has that potential. I think he's basically met that potential, at least of our team, every time. But he could really be like a true shutdown defender on his best day. And then apparently in the JUCO ranks, he still didn't really show much of a 3-point shot. Dambrot mentioned earlier on this season he did not know that Trey could shoot that well.
And not only has he been shooting well, but his handles are like he's getting more. You can just see the confidence oozing out of him. He got like I said, he got to the rack a lot today, where his three shot wasn't quite there, so he got to the rack and he was beating guys off the dribble. Had that step back corner 3 in the Indiana State game. Obviously, in this Winthrop game, he had that sick put back dunk. It basically like a dunk contest type dunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, the confidence is through the roof, and now he's turning into the player that he can probably continue to be. It's a pretty big sample size at this point.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about any of our players really being losing their confidence based off of what I've seen. I think the bigger concern for me would be like the line between confident and cocky. That's for sure. That's the line Dambrot's got to worry about more so than.
And in college, that's going to be the toughest line to walk. It takes years to like, even once you get in the NBA.
Yeah,
like it takes a long time to figure out how much confidence you need, what's your role in a team and stuff like that. So that's not surprising.
Yeah, and JJ Redick illustrates that very well on his podcast. He definitely needs our endorsement for you guys to listen. Definitely.
Yeah. So then in the first half of the season, he was averaging a little over 2 steals a game. Last 6 games, he's averaging a little less than 2 steals a game, but he's doing so much more offensively. Like, it's not really a big difference. It's 2.1 compared to 1.8. So his defense is still there, in my opinion. And then the 3-point attempts, they went from basically 2.5 3-point attempts a game to now 6.5. Like, they just, that, like I said, the confidence that we already talked about is showing in the numbers. And then he's doubled his point average. He was averaging 8.5 points in the first half of the season. Second half, he's averaging an even, or the last 6 games, he's averaging 16. So overall in the season, he's averaging 11.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned it. The defense hasn't dropped off either in this big offensive explosion. He's still seems like the best perimeter defender we have.
Yeah, in today's game, he had 3 steals with no fouls, which is like really hard to
Absurd.
do. Yeah.
Absurd.
So yeah, that's my Trey Williams deep dive. Or Trey Clark deep dive. And then Trey Williams, I guess we can move on to him, right?
Yeah, my one of my favorite players on the team, with his incredible touch near the basket, his physical presence, his great defensive abilities. Go ahead, Alec. Go ahead.
So so when I think about him, I'm trying to think of what his best skill set is. And I would say probably, I don't know if I see the defense as much as Dan Brott and you are seeing, but I would argue it's scoring and rebounding, specifically offensive rebounding. Do you agree with that? Or do you think, do you think I'm totally underestimating his defensive skills?
I think offensively he could. I feel like based off of the bigs we have, he's never going to be the offensive focus of the team. But I do feel like he could have games similar to how he had against Indiana State, if he gets that single man matchup in the post. I feel like regardless of size difference, which he faces a lot, he could dominate if that was his role on the team. But because we have bigs who have similar skill sets, he's got to adjust. I feel that. So sort of, I do agree with you that that could be his strength, but based off the role of the team, he doesn't get to illustrate it as much.
And that shows in the numbers. So I was curious, like, I was listening to Zach Lowe, actually, and he inspired me to look up the same stats.
I was so waiting for you to say that Zach Lowe was covering Duquesne basketball.
No. But he was referencing usage in an NBA equivalent player. I think he was talking about Alex Caruso. But usage basically measures in what percentage of plays are you directly involved in the offense, like what plays are being run for you. So usage, and it measures, I believe it's a field goal attempt, free throw attempt, or a turnover. So those are the key stats that it's deriving from. Trey Williams is averaging the second most minutes on the team, but he's second to last in usage with 16%. So that tells me basically he's out there a lot, but like we said, offensively, he's not getting as many chances as maybe he should. But I don't know if it's a should. I think it just boils down to maybe he should be playing less minutes, and then those minutes would be like more efficient almost. Because on average, you would expect the usage to be like 20% if it's every starter equally. Now, that's never going to be the case. You want your best player to have the ball the most of the time. So, usage wise, Day leads the team, which you want, and he's taking a lot of shots, so that's a good thing. But
is Trey second on usage rate?
Trey's second. No, he's not. Not on usage. He's second on minutes and second to last.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant
on
the other
usage.
Trey Clark.
Trey Clark. He is. So Joe Reese is actually first.
Okay, that makes sense. In his limited minutes, he's a
So and he's come back. He's played a lot less games than everybody, so that kind of shakes out. But yeah, Clark is third then behind Day and Reese, and then it goes McGriff and Dixon is fifth when he's out there.
Which again, I mean,
but he's 20%, so he's even. He's even. But it's the combination of how high his minutes are and how low the usage is. That's not really a good sign. But then you need to know what type of player we're talking about, right? So Kareem Rozier, he's last in usage, 12%, but we're not looking for him to shoot the ball. He's out there as a facilitator, our best ball handler, like rough up on the defensive end. So, that's not something that I'm going to look out for Kareem Rozier, but for someone who's, I think their best attribute is scoring the basketball, and his usage rate is so low, that is kind of alarming to me.
I mean, I'd argue that you should focus more on his defense, because clearly
I'll take a closer look, because like I've talked about in previous podcasts, Dixon's defense really sticks out. Reese's defense for his size sticks out.
Well,
Trey Clark, obviously, perimeter defense sticks out.
I think that's also with an athleticism standpoint too, because Joe Reese and Dixon definitely have the moments where they can do chase down blocks. They can just jump a lot. Like, the athleticism shows, so they have that ability on defense, where I feel like Trey Williams' defense is more so taking players out of the game where they don't get the ball as much and making them pass the ball away so that they're not taking the shots. Like, he's not giving them the positions they want.
Yeah, that's something I'll have to take a closer look at, because it doesn't show in the numbers. Like, he just doesn't get steals. He doesn't get blocks. He averages less than one of each of those a game. So that, like you said, if it's just on ball defense and just positioning, that's something that you need to really key in on a guy to notice. But I think one of his strengths, which I was kind of shocked at, is his offensive rebounding. He's averaging 3.115 on the season. Over the last 6 games, he's averaging 4 per game. So it's basically him and Rotroff that are key contributors in a country-leading offensive rebounding team. So that's a big plus. And then the last thing I have before I go too long on this is he is a good 2% shooter. But if you took out, I took out the Santa Barbara game for Trey Clark because that was an outlier. And if you look at the game log,
take away the Indiana State game.
If you look at the game log, like, he shot 8 of 9. Now I included both. So if you include that, over the last 7 games, he's averaging 55% from the field, 58% from 2. But if you take out the Indiana State game, so now we have a 6-game sample, 47% from the field and 48% from 2. So that really inflated the numbers over the last 7 games.
It's fine.
But so my point is, let's have more games like Indiana State, or let's shoot more. He only had 4 points in the Winthrop game. Like, this is kind of what I'm talking about. He can't just take 4 shots in these many minutes.
Well, I will say this. It seemed like all of our bigs didn't take shots in this game. It was a guard-dominated offensive.
It was, and that was you just reminded me of a good point that I was going to make on top of that. Was it's also up to, especially in college basketball, it's up to the guard to feed the big man. The big man isn't going to have the ball all the time, so you need the guard to really feed you down low, and that really didn't happen in the Winthrop game, to be fair, to Trey Williams. So I will give him that. And
I will say, they were posting up. The big men were posting up.
They were. Yeah.
And they had opportunities. They just weren't getting the ball. That was true with all.
That's a totally fair point.
Yeah. And it's crazy how like the second half, the response to Trey having the ball and the doubling that they did in the second half in Indiana State,
Yeah, no,
like showed incredible respect. And I will say the passing when he did get the double teams was a little questionable at times, but it didn't lead to turnovers. I don't think. At
no,
least,
he only had one turnover in that game.
yeah. Um,
But that's basically it. Let's have more Indiana State games. Not necessarily, you don't have to basically shoot perfect from the field, but let's shoot more and let's get him the ball because I think he is a capable offensive player. Just needs to get the good looks.
all right, and my notes from the women's game from this morning, the 11 o'clock start time.
Crazy.
It really doesn't feel like this should be a thing in college basketball, but hey,
Only Premier League can start in the mornings.
Tess Myers, who was already leading the NCAA in threes after their last game, started the game 6 for 8 from three. She made five for 6 in the first half. So she kept that hot streak going. Is the sole possession of the 3-point lead in the NCAA after their game ended. I don't know if there were games in between their game ending and now, but she had a pretty strong grasp on it. The person who was ahead of her going into today's game had played 2 more games than Duquesne did. So,
oh wow,
yeah, Tess is there. She's a shooter. She is the best shooter in the country. I'm gonna say it every time she makes one at this point until it's no longer true. 10 wins in non-conference is very nice for both teams. Was really excited to see that. Women's team has struggled the past few years, and before that, it was kind of the expectation to have around 10 wins in non-conference. Glad they got back to that. In a few podcasts ago, I described the women's basketball team as complete would be the word that I would use. I felt like Holiday had a bit of a drop off in today's game when she had to be the primary point guard after Meg went out. So that has kind of taken my expectations were sky high for the team. So admittedly, there's a lot of optimism there. It has tempered now that I've seen what we look like without Meg. From the guys' standpoint, I feel like if we lose one player, we've lost one player just about every single position now. We've shown that we can move around that pretty well, that we'll adapt. The women's team, it feels like if Meg's gone, that's a big hole. So that is, and I mean, it makes sense. She leads the team in a bunch of categories. She's the true floor general point guard. That's big shoes to fill. And like we talked about with Day Day earlier, it's not necessarily that the players behind her are bad. It's the fact that she's just so much higher than the average player that it makes it look like that much bigger of a gulf.
These are equivalent to like all-star players. Like when you lose your all-star in the NBA, no one's gonna really replace that.
Right. Yeah, and I did note Amaya Hamilton played point a little bit in this game, the Ben Simmons esque position, which I mean she's not bad at dribbling the ball. She is good at being a point guard, but like I said, her best skill is attacking the basket offensively. So it's a trade-off. Defensively, that's a scary proposition because she can defend every single position on the floor.
Love that.
Yeah, but also Meg's really good at stealing the ball too. So like it's not even though Amaya's like a great defender, it hurts that both of them aren't out there at the same time. Like it's never going to be a good thing. So those were my takeaways from the women's game. I mean, we touched on it. When there's dominant games played, it's hard to really go as in depth into the games.
Yeah, there's not going to be a ton to talk about in the Winthrop game.
Yeah, they dominated in the first half and then they coasted in the second half. The girls more so coasted because they lost their star point guard who controls the offense, and Bert chalked it up to as much. On the guys' side of things, Dambrot attributed it to a lack of maturity, and basically just playing with the lead kind of affected how they play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which I get, but at the same time, I may also not have the maturity to really care about it as much because, I mean, you're still won by what, 16 points or something like that. It was a wide enough gap where you were comfortable. You were never worried at all, really at all in this game.
No, 17 points.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, I took one away from you. Yeah, I mean, my notes from this one, the guards dominated the offense, and I mean, they shot the ball well, so that's fine. I
They
really
shot okay, I thought. Like they were good, but not.
well,
They
I'll say
they shot too much. They
well,
shot too much, basically.
definitely, but like from a percentage perspective, I'd still say that this was good compared to where we have been the past, I don't know, however many games. Um, I'm not saying this was great shooting by any means, but this was still good, I'd say, characteristically.
It was good that I just thought they shot too much from
Yeah,
the guards
I
point of view.
I mean,
That's
I
all.
think we both agree with that. But I also, the thing that I took from this is our team is so balanced where, regardless of the matchup, we can pick out the weaknesses and adjust our game plan to that. Kind of like
Yeah.
the Patriots in their heyday could adjust their defense to any sort of scheme. I feel like this is how our offense is, where we can just adjust to whatever the other team's doing and attack them at their weakest point, which is awesome.
And I didn't think I would have thought that based on size alone, like Winthrop wasn't that big again, similar to Indiana State. And no one really in the front court really ate in this game. But I have a question. Why do you think Reese only played 18 minutes in this game?
There was a mention of foul trouble between the bigs.
But he had one foul in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
He ended with 3 personal fouls. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Reese specifically, I thought that was kind of odd. So
Yeah, I didn't get any indication that he was hurt at all. He didn't really limp off the floor ever. I don't know. I thought that was weird.
I don't think it was real foul trouble like that. They said that on the broadcast, but then they said he had 1 foul early in the first half, but he never got the 2.
Yeah,
but that was because he didn't play.
I'm trying to think of because
and he had 8 points in 18 minutes. Like that's kind of the those per 36 that I was looking at earlier. Like that's really good efficiency in those minutes.
Wait, you mean if you multiply 8 by 2, 16 points?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the rationale necessarily is, but
anyway,
it didn't hurt, and it was also giving those younger guys a few more minutes. I feel like they were really trying to spread minutes out in this one. From the guard perspective, they have to find answers with 2 of those guys out, and then at the 4, they officially are no longer expecting. Like we weren't really expecting Easley to come back, but now it's official. So now we're just waiting on RJ Gunn to come back to hopefully help with that. And I mean, the entire team saw at least 1 minute today. Even athletic director Harper's son got some minutes at the end of this game. So everybody got to play. So that maybe that took like 2 minutes from Reese's like expected play, which would get him to 20, which still is like 5 minutes less than what he's been averaging. But yeah,
exactly. And he's been good. But that was just, I wanted to hear your thoughts about it. Not a huge deal. Obviously, it was a 17-point victory, so I'm not going to harp on it.
Right.
I just thought that was weird.
And now they have a week-long break from game action between now and the Dayton game. So, I mean, giving them some lighter minutes, letting them rest up a little bit, maybe to try and get them healthier if any other players are dealing with stuff like we know McGriff is with his knee. If there are any like lingering pain that they're playing through or something like that, it's a good way to give them some time off.
No, yeah, important rest for sure.
Yeah, and I mean Dayton.
I've like three things real quick
All right.
on this Winthrop game. One, the Jimmy Clark putback was sick. Let's just acknowledge
100%.
that. That was
100%.
awesome.
That was
Just cool basketball.
And then it was followed up by that Day Grant from long distance too.
Yeah.
That was just a great sequence.
There was a great play design in the first half for Dixon to get that alley oop.
Yes.
That was a great play. Love, like I said, favorite play in basketball for me at the alley oop.
Speaking of the alley oop, Day's no look alley oop pass to Trey was also pretty nice.
Yep. So let's just acknowledge these sick basketball plays. And then which we haven't really seen other than since Dixon was starting, but Dixon and Williams played a little bit together in this game, and they were switching on the defensive end. I'm almost interested to see that more.
Oh my gosh, you went from Dixon replacing Williams to wanting to see them play together. Wow.
I'm going to, because we don't really switch a lot, but Dixon is kind of the perfect five to switch with. You could, and then since we have Brewer and Rozier out, we don't have a height disadvantage anywhere. So that five on the floor, McGriff, Clark, Day, Williams, and Dixon. I don't know. It's just an intriguing thing that I thought about. That's all.
We've seen a lot of position.
Be a cool switch defense, but we probably won't see a lot of that. But that was just something I thought about.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen positionless basketball from the last two opponents we've had, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I think like you said, we can adapt. So not only offensively, but defensively, we can maybe adapt. That could be a look that we can throw out there. And then the last thing, Day had a good game. Had 21 points, shot 6 of 18 from the field, 6 of 14 from 3, 14 threes, like Jesus Christ. That's a lot. But he made 6, so he had a good game. But he's got a good handle, and he reminds me of like Neymar in soccer in early Neymar years, where he would beat someone off the dribble and then he would slow down to just beat them again. And so he will like do a hezzy move and he won't, where I think he has his defender beat and he won't get to the basket. He'll just kind of take it back and shoot a 3. Whereas Clark in this game, he's got his go-to move. He's got a quick first step and he gets it to the lane and for an easy layup. I feel like Clark can get to the basket a little bit more, and he's very capable of it.
Yeah.
So I would like to see that a little bit more from Day.
Yeah. All right.
That was it from this game for me.
All right. Now let's look ahead to Dayton, the next game on the Duquesne basketball schedule. I mean, the clear talking point for Dayton is Deron Holmes, who killed us last year in a game where, I mean, a team that didn't have really many bigs that could defend a true 5. I mean, Deron was a guy that like you could expect to possibly go to the NBA after this season, going into the season. Right now, I don't think he's there, but he's still, for A10, he's still considerations for conference player of the year. Still terrifying. Has good post moves. I won't say great. I honestly feel like Joe Reese and Trey have better post moves to get their shots than he does, but he just is so good at dunking the ball. Like, it seems like he's always able to get.
Is he more physical? Like, is he a lot bigger than Reese?
So he's tall. He's taller and longer than Reese.
Okay.
But he's not like much more.
He's not a big bulky.
No. Okay. I'd say that he's like Joe Reese except bigger. So, or I should say longer. I mean, rebounding, he does well. He definitely is better defensive rebounding than our bigs have been. But I will note, we did a much better job of being a stereotypical rebounding team against Wofford today. I looked at the stats. Winthrop, yeah. Did
Yeah, you're right.
much better on that end. And I saw a focal point with Rotroff and with Trey on. It seemed like they were actually focusing on the defensive rebounding end in the game. I did notice that in the minutes that I watched while also working.
It's funny you bring up defensive rebounding for Dayton. They're third in the A10 defensive rebounds a game, and fifth. That's ranked 50th nationally. So
yeah,
offensive rebounding is our strength. So that'll be an interesting kind of statistic to keep an eye on in this game.
Yeah, and I will say Dayton's team definitely doesn't seem to be as deep as Duquesne's rotation. I mean, minutes wise, it seems like it's probably similar, but the starters, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, basically all 5 are averaging 30 minutes plus. The fifth guy is averaging 29.2. So they are more reliant, I'd say, on their starting lineup than we are of ours. But we're also going to be going into the game not fully healthy, so it kind of evens out, I think.
For sure.
Not necessarily statistically because he's been hurt, but Malachi Smith was like the guard that I was most scared of against Dayton. I don't know if he'll be back for our game or not. But if he is back,
good.
If he is back in our game, that's a little more firepower to their team.
So yeah, overall, just based on kind of the rankings that I looked up, this just seems like it's a good offense versus a good defense. So Duquesne would be the offensive team. Dayton is ranked first in opponent 3-point percentage given up. On the defensive end in the A10. Yeah, and that's ranked 22nd nationally. That's per KenPom. They're ranked 13th in the country in opponent effective field goal percentage. 29th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So, but what I found interesting was their defense doesn't necessarily lead to forced turnovers. They're not like turnover percentages pretty low, and it's really just blocks. They defend the 3 and they have a high block percentage. So they're defending the paint, they're defending the 3, but they're not necessarily forcing turnovers. So it seems like it's going to be tough to get open looks. It seems like.
Yeah, I think. I mean, offensively, I don't know if they're as efficient as Notre Dame was back when they ran the burn style play back in like the early 2000s, where like games ended in the 50s and 60s. But that is what Dayton's doing basically.
Yeah, they're ranked 300th and 8th in points per game nationally.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a game 44-42 or something like that against Wisconsin earlier this year.
Yeah,
yeah, like that. They bleed clock, and I think it's strategically. But I also think that like that's a sign that we shouldn't get beat on the defensive end as much against them either. So that like strength against strength and weakness against weakness, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty much, and everything that we're good at, they're bad at it, and everything we're bad at, they're good at.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fascinating. You said that they bleed clock. They're ranked 303rd in adjusted tempo per KenPom. So they're just like going at a snail's pace basically on offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I think they have a chance. I don't know. I don't. This is the last thing I'll bring up, and then we can close it out. But I'm almost a little worried that the Dukes are like got into a routine of just playing in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And I mean, Dayton being
they obviously have all played away games, like they're collegiate athletes, Division I athletes, but you can't sit here and tell me that having 8 games or so in a row at home doesn't create some sort of routine for yourself. And then when all of a sudden you break that routine, you're going to be potentially out of rhythm. Like that's just, I don't know, just from a human standpoint.
I mean, it's definitely a potential, but I will say Dayton is not necessarily the away game that's going to throw them too far out of that, because Dayton's not too far of a drive from Pittsburgh. So that's the good news. And
It's
like
4 hours. Like it's it's decent.
yeah, but like the game, the neutral site game.
It's just you're not in an environment that you are gotten used to, basically.
Right. And I mean, you can say a lot about Dayton. Their fans just love going to Dayton basketball games. Like that, they are the envy when it comes to fan bases of the Atlantic 10 teams. I don't know if Duquesne can ever reach that point, but man, that would be something to see Duquesne sell out and the students be as dedicated as the Dayton fans are. I mean, when we play them at Pittsburgh, the arena is packed, and it's because more Dayton fans come, not necessarily more Duquesne fans.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like it's in the back of my mind. I'll say it's not a huge worry going into this game, but it's definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah, especially with the young players that do provide key minutes for us. It will be interesting to see how they play in a hostile environment. Because I'm trying to think of who was our away games that we played. I know it's only been like 2. Kentucky, which, I mean, hostile environment. We didn't play all that well.
And the other one was the neutral site at Colgate, right?
Yeah, against Colgate. Which that wasn't a hostile environment at all. It was just a 1,000 fans in a.
So I guess I mean our one away game this season was at Kentucky. So I guess that is a pretty good prep if you're gonna have one away game, but
we didn't respond well to it, so there's that. Although I mean the first bit of that game, we looked like we belonged, which was better than I was expecting going into it.
Yeah.
But then we let the game get to us. I don't know if that was necessarily the fans. I
mean, Kentucky is ranked 4th in the country, so
right.
Let's...
I understand, but I'm saying, well, Dayton was ranked in the top 25 going into the country, into the season. The season has shown that they didn't deserve that ranking, but yeah, I don't think the fan base in the hostile environment was the cause for our struggles against Kentucky, but I mean, it could play a part in it, especially as you said, since it's been so long since they've dealt with an away fan base.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's just something but I'm excited for this game. I think they have a shot. It's going to be ugly. I just don't want them to get too frustrated with finding open looks and they're going to be taking bad shots. They need to be disciplined in what shots they're taking, and they have to mix it up offensively. And obviously, let's not bleed defensive rebounds. That's going to be the key on defense. Don't bleed defensive rebounds. But we've improved the last few games, so let's keep it up.
Yeah. And I mean the next game after that is both teams play Rhode Island at 1:00. Women's play at Rhode Island, men play at home. But we'll be able to talk about those games in much more detail at the next podcast. Which we will probably tape at the very end of the Dayton Duquesne game, so you'll still get a little bit of a live watch along.
We have to, yeah.
Even if, regardless of the result, we're gonna have to start then. Man, I hope it's a blowout one way or the other. I don't want a close game during the podcast. I do not.
I think it's good. I think it has potential to be a competitive game.
Does, yeah, definitely does. It's weird that we're mirror images of each other, and also both of us have had a player announce that they're transferring this week. As Dayton, what was it? One of their forwards, Tyrone Baker, announced on Monday that he's entering the transfer portal. So,
sure,
yeah, similar to Kevin Easley. Okay,
sure. I'm sure they're heartbroken about it.
Yeah, I didn't see his stats because they took him off the roster on their school website, but I'd imagine he wasn't playing too many minutes. Yeah, so it'll be fun to watch, and by the time that happens, we'll be seeing you next time, folks.
Adios.
Back and now it's time to rise up, rise up.